What on guys, Commander here, and welcome to my first impressions and opinions review on Halo Wars 2. Now, I do apologise for the delay in doing this video. It was only until my brother actually got the game a couple days ago, as of recording this video, that I decided to do this review. Now, I said before in one of my first impressions and opinions reviews of something else, I think it was talking about like Halo or something, that I wasn't going to personally buy Halo Wars 2. If I saw it for cheap for like £2 or £3 in the next year or two, I more than likely would get it just because it's a Halo game that I can get for £2 or £3. But even my brother got this for £20 and 18 quid, and I wouldn't have paid that much for this game. And the reason why is because I never thought I really want this game. I never felt the hype for it. I never pre-ordered it. I never felt hyped to get it. Whereas with Halo 5, I mean, I didn't pre-order that because that came with my Xbox One. And I didn't have an Xbox One at the time, so that sort of came with it. But if I did have an Xbox One before Halo 5 Guardians came out, I would have pre-ordered it because I had a really big hype for that game. And with Battlefront 2, I've pre-ordered that, and I got really big hype for it coming out. I never had that with this, which is why I didn't pre-order it, and I wouldn't have bought it myself unless I saw it for a couple quid in CX or Game Exchange. So without going into too much detail on why I won't buy it, now that I've got the game, I've done a bit of gameplay, and I'm going to do a review of what has changed since the first one, what has not changed, what stayed the same, and what I don't like. Now, what has changed is going to include what I like about the game, and what has stayed the same is going to consist of some things that I don't like, but might have a few things that I like because that may make it good. But things that I don't like will just be things that I just don't like. So starting with the things that have changed. Now, a Halo game or a game in general that has been made about at least 7 years after the original first one came out is obviously going to have remodeled textures, characters and bases, and general map looks. And that's something that I really, really like. Now, when the betas came out, so the first beta, which was the normal classic build your base, build your units, get your upgrades, and attack your enemy came out, and when the Blitz came out, I wasn't too impressed with how the characters were. I thought they looked too similar to the way Halo Wars 1 was, in the sense that they were very blocky, just colours. They were not very textured to look like actual Halo characters, except for the big things like the Scarab tank, which actually had to be modelled properly because it was a large unit and it couldn't just be one big colour. Yeah, but they've redone that. They've remodelled them to the slightest texture in the full release of the game, which I absolutely love. All of the textures of the bases look similar in the way of their designs. They don't look like they're not Halo characters, but they look different. They look different in the sense that they are still Halo characters, but they're different, so they're not exactly the same. And that goes with textures, characters and bases. The bases look really nice. They've been revamped. They look really, really nice. The Covenant bases is all brand new. I don't know if I like the look of the Covenant base or not, because it just looks really weird. Whereas in Halo 1, the Halo Wars 1, the Covenant base looked like a Covenant base, if that makes sense. In this one, I don't know where they got the idea from. I don't recognise it at all. So that's sort of like a dislike with something that's changed, but I more like a change that looks similar to something the Covenant would use, rather than have it outrageously different that I wouldn't even recognise it as something from Halo. The next few things are just sort of like little things that have changed. There probably are loads more that I can talk about in things that have changed, because quite a few things have changed in the game generally. Like there's Blitz, which I'll come on to in a second, which I'll actually talk more about. But first of all, there's new maps. Now, I'm not going to talk too much on this because I haven't played all of the maps. I've only played a few games of Skirmish. I've played one Blitz online mode, and I've played one actual normal build your base, build your units, upgrade your base, and attack game, because I just haven't had the chance to play it. But they've got a load of new maps, which look absolutely stunning from my perspective. I mean, I play old games like Stellaris, Empire at War, and Halo Wars 1, and just looking on an RTS with such great map graphics just looks absolutely amazing. I love it immensely. Now, bearing in mind I haven't played the campaign yet, I don't think I will, just because I don't intend to play this game too much. I'll play it every now and again if I'm bored, but I don't intend to play it too much. I don't intend to play the campaign of Halo Wars 2. I didn't play the campaign of Halo Wars 1. I don't think I'll play the campaign of Halo Wars 2. Another thing that I've noticed, which I do like quite a lot, is there's more units and characters that you can play as. Now, I'll come into the reason that I sort of don't like the way they've done this later on in things that I don't like, full stop. But there's a total of about 15 characters that you can play as, from the UNSC, the Banished, as it's now known, not the Covenant, the Banished, and you've got a few like classic characters like Sergeant Johnson and Sergeant Forge, from the old Halo games that you can play as well, which I think was a really, really nice touch. I really like that, and the Flood characters as well. My last little thing that's changed I really do like, before I get onto the Blitz game mode, is when you're actually playing in the game, they've increased the amount of units that you can have. Not by a lot, but there's a few more units that you can get. There's a few more units you can get, it's just the way, I can't think off the top of my head, because again, I haven't played it very much, but I know that, in Halo Wars 1, for instance, you can get, you could get grunts, jackals, and hunters, in your infantry training ground. In this, game, you can get, let's say I'm playing as a shipmaster. You can play as you can have brutes, suicide grunts, Covenant elites just on their own, and hunters. So that's two more new units, and the grunt units are in the main bases unit. Now, something that I don't like necessarily is they've gotten rid of the jackals. Now, I know the reason why they've gotten rid of the jackals is because the jackals, as far as Halo continuity is concerned, have always been loyal to the Covenant. Now, as far as Halo Wars 2 is concerned, this group is not the Covenant, it's the Banished. So I can understand why the jackals are not in this game, because they were loyal to the Covenant and only the Covenant and nobody else, and this is not the Covenant. So I don't like the fact that the jackals are not there, but I can give 343 a break because I know why they're not there. Alright, so the new game mode I want to talk about is Blitz. Now, what Blitz is it's basically a game mode where, think about strongholds in Halo 5 Guardians, but in RTS version. So, you have 3 control points, so A, B, and C, for example, and you have a selected amount of units, and you've got to go and capture those control points, and your team has to be the first to, let's say, score 250 points. And you get this by controlling the majority or all of the control points. So if you control the majority, your points go up slowly. If you control all of them, it'll start going up a bit more quicker. Now, the way you bring in more reinforcements in this game is not by building a base and training more units and going in all full force. It's by gaining energy, which you use to bring in reinforcements into the battlefield using cards in the bottom of your screen. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a Blitz game mode, which I can use to show you what it's like. I forgot to record it. I've only done one match of skirmish, just because I couldn't be bothered waiting for waiting to get into a game, which I like to talk about things that I don't like later on. But something that I just don't it's just I didn't get the chance to record it, so I'm sorry about that. But the Blitz game mode is basically you have a selection of cards in your bottom hand, and you, let's say, start with 100 energy. So and you earn your energy by either attacking little mini energy drops, or you attack your enemy. So you attack your enemy's troops, which will give you more energy, which will in turn. So let's say I attack my enemy and I get let's say 250 energy afterwards. The troops that you get in your hand can range from a squadron of grunts to a massive scarab tank. And so let's say I had 250 to 300 energy. I could get a grunt, a wraith, and a locust, and get them all into the battlefield, and use them to attack my enemy, which then would make my energy go up even more, which I could then use to bring in more reinforcements to destroy them, which I think is a really nice way of how this game mode works. I really think it flows really, really well, and I think 343 have made a really good choice with this game. Now, I've played many RTS games in the past, whether it be Star Wars Empire War, whether it be Stellaris, whether it be Halo Wars 1, nothing that I've ever seen has come close to giving us the being any similar than what Blitz is. I think it's a really, really good game mode, and I think it's something that if other game developers that make RTS games should adopt, because I think it's really, really well done the way 343 have done this, and I really, 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 really like it. Now, we're coming on to things that have stayed the same and things that I don't really like. Now, bearing in mind, some of this stuff that has stayed the same is things that I do like in things that what have changed, I don't particularly like. I put in a few, but with this, it's mostly what I don't like, but it can be a bit positive as well. Now, the first thing is the way you play. Now, when I say the way you play is by training units, upgrading units, and winning. Now, bear in mind, I've only played a couple games of Halo Wars 2, but from what I can gather, because I believe the best first impressions you can get is only by playing a couple games. Because if you play a game too much, I made this mistake with Halo 5 Guardians before I did my first impressions and opinions review on it. I think I did it on it, or I think it might have been Halo 5 Firefight, I don't know. But I believe that if you play, let's say, 5 games of something, I think you can get the better first impressions idea than if you play 50. Just because then it's not first impressions, that's more. Because if you play 5, that's your first impressions of the game. If you play 50, that's not your first impressions. That's your impressions after playing the game, after you played the game for about 3 hours straight, or more. But I've only played a couple games, and what I have noticed is the way you play is very, very similar, if not exactly the same, to Halo Wars 1. Now, upgrades are slightly different because they've sort of moved the upgrades around a bit, but something I don't like is what they've basically done is they've taken the upgrades out of somewhere and put it somewhere else. So let's say for the infantry training, so the training that your infantry, like your brutes, your jackals, no, not your jackals, the brutes, your elites, your hunters, and your suicide grunts. In Halo Wars 1, you would have your grunts, your jackals, and your hunters, and you would have 3 upgrades for each of those units. And the same with your tanks. You would have your ghost, your wraith, and your locust, and you would have 3 upgrades for each of them. Now, what they've done with Halo Wars 2 is they've only got certain characters. I think it's the suicide grunts, the brutes, and the hunters that have actually got upgrades, but they've only got 1 upgrade. They don't even have 3 upgrades. They only have the 1. But what they've done is they've taken those upgrades that they took from the Halo units and plonked them somewhere else, and that's by upgrading the actual unit area. So what you would do is that, let's say you would start and build a level 1 foundry, for instance. So a foundry is where you train your vehicles. So you start with level 1 foundry, and you can upgrade your foundry, and that would give your vehicles more health, more firepower, etc. Now, that's just basically taking the upgrades from somewhere and putting it somewhere else, which I think is just a bit lazy, if I'm honest. I perfectly like the upgrade system in Halo Wars 1, and I personally wish it would have stayed that way, because it just makes it seem a lot more simpler. And I don't see the need of upgrading your foundry. I can understand the need of upgrading your HQ, because that does give you, because that can be an incentive. So you upgrade your HQ, which gives you access to build more units and more different units, which I think is good. But upgrading your hero council, where you buy hero units or your infantry or your vehicle training thing, I don't think that's very good. I think that's just lazy and just taking upgrades from somewhere and putting it somewhere else. So that's just what I think about that. Training units, again, is very, very similar. I'm not sure how else they could have incorporated that, really. I don't see how they could have incorporated that, really, but I do like the way it's the same. It's sort of, things have stayed the same, but I like is training units, because it's, as it was, it's very, very simple. And it's simple, it's easy, and it's not very complicated. So that's something that stayed the same that I like. Now, another thing that stayed the same that I don't like is the winning system. Now, there is a segment in the settings on the skirmish where it says other buildings except for main building do not count as HQ. So you have your main building, your main enemy building, and what the HQ means is the main area, so the main building. And there is also another setting where if HQ is destroyed, win game after 60 seconds, let's say, and you can change that time depending. Now, if you had that switched on, so had every main building that you build is classed as a HQ, once you've destroyed the main base, what everything else turns into is basically what Halo Wars 1 was basically a search and destroy kind of mission. So you build up this massive army with a Scarab tank, 3 Wraiths, 3 Locusts, and a load of infantry, and you go and attack, and once you've pushed through all of your enemy soldiers and their massive army, and pushed through to the enemy base and destroyed that with flying colours and massive explosions, you're then left with the really naff job and the really boring job of sending all your troops out to different directions on a search and destroy mission to try and find all your enemies' other bases. Now, if you play like me, where you like to build up all of your units first and then go on a massive full frontal offensive, that doesn't work. Because it does work, because I've won a couple of games by doing it, but you have to go on a search and destroy mission, which isn't really very good. I don't like it. It's very naff the way it works, which I don't particularly like. Now, something else has stayed the same, which I sort of don't like either, is the UNSC base loadout and the layout. Now, as I was saying how I don't really like how they've changed the Covenant or the Banished base, and how it just doesn't look very much like Halo style, even though it sort of does a little bit. On the opposite end of the spectrum is the UNSC based loadout, where nothing has changed at all. It's literally exactly the same as Halo Wars 1. Now, bear in mind, I haven't strictly played as any UNSC characters before, but I've played against UNSC characters before, and their base is exactly the same. It's all square blocks put together to make one base. They could have at least made it look semi-different. And that's just something I don't like, whereas you have one end of the spectrum where it looks completely different from Halo Wars 1, but it doesn't look Halo. And on the other end of the spectrum, with the UNSC, you've got a base that looks exactly the same as it did in Halo Wars 1. So, that's something that I just don't like at all, because that should have been in the don't like segment on my little notepad document that I've got with all the things I need to talk about. But you know, I just don't like that because it's too similar. It's too the same. I mean, I never played as UNSC much anyway because I don't like their units. I much prefer playing as the Covenant. Now, the main thing that stayed the same, and that my real bugbear about this game is the general logic of the game has stayed the same. Now, don't get me confused with me talking about Blitz here. I'm talking about the main area of Halo Wars 2. The main logic of the game has stayed the same. You build units, you upgrade your base, you build your base up, you build your defenses up, you build a massive army of units, and you go and attack your enemy. That was the same in Halo Wars, and that's the same in Halo Wars 2. The general logic of the game has stayed the same. Alright, so now on to the bit of this video where I'm going to review the things I really don't like. Now, there's only one thing that I really dislike. And it's quite a big one, although it's not a really big one. But this is the paid DLC that are in the game. Now, if you're not aware, Halo Wars 2 has a number of paid DLC. Now, I'll tell you why I can sort of forgive this a little bit, but before I go on my little moan about it. Now, paid DLC, I personally do not like paid DLC. I've never bought a paid for DLC, at all, I don't think, unless it's only for a couple pence. So, let's say the Rocket League DLC is only like 95 pence, so it's like just like 95 pence DLC I may as well. I'm not breaking the bank by buying it. But let's say, for instance, the Star Wars Battlefront 2015 DLC that cost like 12 quid each. Never in my life would I have chosen to buy that, because it's just ridiculous. But DLC is sort of, you can understand where it's coming from, but from a game such as Halo Wars 2, where none of the previous games have had paid for DLC, they've had microtransactions, that's completely different, but they've never had paid for DLC. All of the DLC in the past Halo games has been free, except for maybe a couple maps on the 360, but that was the 360 days. And again, that's only maps. These are playable characters, and the flood part of the game, which is a large chunk of the game, plus the flood firefight, that is a whole DLC in itself. Now, that is one chunk of the game. Now, that is the reason why I don't like the fact that this has paid DLC in it. And also because the DLC is like 15 quid per DLC. That is a game. That is like a quarter of a game worth of DLC right there in one DLC. And I don't know how much the characters are in the way of how much they cost per character. But I still wouldn't buy any more characters just to give me more access in the game. Now, the reason why I can sort of forgive Halo Wars 2 for this, not for the big flood DLC, but for the characters mainly, is because there is enough in the game, in the base game, without buying the DLC, to enjoy yourself and keep yourself entertained for a long period of time. I find DLC is good for, if you really want a DLC, I think it's good for, let's say, Christmas or birthdays, where you're not spending your own money, you're having people who want to buy you gifts do it for you. So, and what I like with Halo Wars 2 is they've put in DLC, but unlike Battlefront 2, where you only had a small minority, it was literally like 10% of the actual game was the base content at launch. Everything else was DLC. Now, I didn't like that, and nobody else did. That's where paid DLC is wrong, and where it is not very good at all. Halo Wars 2, there's enough content in there to keep you busy until, let's say, you have like the odd 15 quid spare from doing whatever, where you can't think of anything else to buy, and you think, oh, I'll just buy a DLC off of Halo Wars 2. So, having said all that, that is about what we have time for in this video right here. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Final thoughts on Halo Wars 2. My opinion hasn't really changed from the way I felt before I played it, in the sense that I can understand why I didn't have any hype for the game. It's basically the same as Halo Wars 1. I still personally wouldn't pay any more than 12 quid for the game, just because it's just a massive repeat, in my opinion, of the game, just with better graphics and new units, well, a couple new units, and a different campaign, and with Blitz. But apart from that, it's just basically the same game. You've still got the skirmish, you've still got the multiplayer, you've got the paid DLC, which is a massive negative on my opinion of it. But I really I don't hate the game. I wouldn't say I would never play it, but I wouldn't, if let's say I had to play Watch Dogs, Slime Rancher, Battlefront 2015 or Halo Wars 2, I would definitely not choose Halo Wars 2. Just because well, actually, let's put this a different way. Let's say I had either to play Battlefront 2015 or Halo Wars 2. I would choose Battlefront 2015, just because yes, there's a lot of negatives to it, but I enjoyed the game. So anyway, without going on for too much longer, I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you have enjoyed, don't forget to smash the like button and hit that subscribe button for more awesome gaming content, and I shall see you all later. Bye!